Morning, it's Chris with Superfly, and we're here to talk about Paraglider Speed System. It's been 10 or 20 years now that we've been pushing the bar and enjoying all the fruits. People blasting all over the world, making all their dreams come true, but there are details. Good news is we got clever and we realized you don't push speed bar and pull brake at the same time. That was silly, and we just didn't know any better, but for sure on the modern gliders, it does a shape that isn't meant to be. Speaking to the subject of pilots from the P2 level all the way up to new D pilot, pushing speed bar and trying to make their paragliders go fast, it's important to look at the big picture. And the big picture says, this is the world's worst performing aircraft. It asks the question, what are we doing trying to make this world's worst performing aircraft go far or go fast? It's human nature to chase down every bit of performance you can get, and it's okay. But we need to keep this in mind from the word go. This is not a fast aircraft by definition. If we wanted to go fast, we'd fly something else. When we go about the business pushing the speed bar, we need to do a due diligence check to make sure that it makes sense. So step one is to make sure that the situation warrants it. I can't tell you how many friends I've had that push speed bar because they read about it, were testing the limits, doing the exercises, doing the drills, and then they tweaked the glider to an aggressive configuration, had a deflation, and it ruined their day. In the end, they circled back on the beginning and said, hey, why was it I was pushing the speed bar again? And they found out there was no end game in it. All they were doing was sinking out anyway. In the end, the only viable reason was they were pushing some speed to learn how to push speed and get better at it. But in doing so, they found themselves in harm's way. So step one, make sure it's gonna help your end game, or make sure it's a good practice environment, like really clean air, really good altitude, and you're working at incremental progression. The work when it comes to speed system use is teaching yourself to push the speed bar gently, smoothly, appropriately, teaching yourself to sense when you're starting to move into a piece of air that is going to necessitate letting off the bar, returning back to speed bar as appropriate. So that's a fine art, and that should take a while. And if you're a new beginner pilot, P2 or P3, then you should have spent some months, and you should have some hours, and you should have some data points, and you should have some perspective on the simple art of pushing the gas. As we mentioned, we're all tuned up on flying on the rears, basically. So if it's a 3-riser glider, then you're putting your hand between the B and the C, or using whatever C handles are provided. You're working those Cs. And so the question when it comes to that is, have you done the work on that? And the basic work that is to be done is to be flying along at trim speed, and put your hands on the C handles, or put your hands on the C riser. We encourage our guys to put our thumb right on the magnet of the C riser, and then work the rears a couple inches here, a couple inches there, and just teach the hands to move. And what you're supposed to be rehearsing is when you're on the speed bar and you pull a little bit of rear riser in anticipation of some turbulence. Maybe it was there, maybe it wasn't. 9 times out of 10 it wasn't, and you let back off. And you need to train the brain that when you hit the turbulence, the hands pull and release back off. And that takes some time, and you can learn that also on the ground. So if you're gonna get into the speed bar, then make sure you did the work on how to work the rear riser. Moving right along to higher level pilots, and I'm not a comp level pilot at this point, so I can't say exactly, but I think the word on the street is the very same. When you're pushing the speed bar, you have to be trigger happy ready to yank the rears, to stop the glider from deflating, to keep the tip from coming in and tucking, to keep the tips from going forward. You have to prevent a lot of things, and your first line of response is rear risers. Now, it goes without saying that you do want to let off the gas, but if you're letting off the gas constantly, then you're probably going to have a fairly inefficient glide. If every time you anticipate some turbulence, you add a little rears and then let back off, and then add a little rears and let back off, stay on the speed, then that's how the higher level pilots are getting the best possible glides. Finally, there's the fine art of letting off and getting back to the glider. That's the most important skill. So by the time you realize that there's people in front of you climbing, hitting turbulence, etc., then you need to be adding a little rear riser, letting off the gas. Remember, you can let off the gas as quick as you want. You'll never get punished for that. Back to the brakes, take a wrap, and oh, does that process need to be dialed. So remember, you're gonna go from speed on, hands high, working the rears, to letting off, pulling a little bit of rears, grabbing some brake, taking a wrap, and you're gonna have a whole different mode, and that's gonna be your thermaling mode, and that's gonna be your prevent deflations mode, and that's gonna be your fix it if the glider's got a problem mode, and oh, do you need to be quick going to that. And so if you haven't practiced your speed transitioning from fast mode to survival mode, and that's not just intuitive for you, then you have work to do. And so Instagram's been amazing for us. We just chase down all the deflation videos while people are on bar. We just do a due diligence check and see how the person did. We have a list and it says, hey, was the SpeedBar warranted? Hey, did this person look like they had game? Hey, did it look like they were doing the work while they were pushing the bar? Did they anticipate the deflation? Did they manage it well once it started to ensue? How quickly did they let off the speed? How quickly were they back on the brakes? And scale of 1 to 10, how much game did the person have? Were they in over their head? Every pilot should be chasing down those videos. And if you're pushing SpeedBar, then you should be able to look at that video and you should be able to call it point by point. You should be able to call out those things and say on demand what the move is to fix whatever's happening. And if you can't, if you don't see it, or if you don't have the moves, then again, you're in over your head. The final disclaimer, people talk about SpeedBar use. 9 times out of 10, they're gonna be talking about flying in Europe. They're gonna be talking about flying in South America, Asia, Central America. The list goes on and on. We're not flying in any of those places, and our conditions are completely different. No one's flying in more wind. No one's flying at higher altitude. No one's more under the jet stream. No one's flying in more dirt, and no one's getting after it more than we are in the American West. So if you happen to be flying here, then the starry-eyed information about work your SpeedBar in between every thermal, or trust your SpeedBar, or just stay out of the brake, just let it fly as you go through the turbulence, is pure insanity. The American West demands that we be, as described, just straight wizards at transitioning from a little gas sparingly, pushed when the conditions support it, to letting off quick, nervous that we might be about to hit some turbulence, nervous that we might be about to have a deflation. Sounds a little crazy, and if you're imagining that a pilot might spend their whole life letting off the speed, grab and brake, transitioning out of speed mode into slow mode, survival mode, 9.8 times out of 10, there was nothing there. If that sounds like what's being described, that's exactly what we're coaching. And the idea is that the big deflation that's gonna ruin your day, by the time you're pushing SpeedBar, depending on what you're flying, it's gonna be anywhere from a 1 in 500 to a 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 2,000 sort of thing. That moment can define you, and you have to get ahead of it. And you have to do the work day by day to prevent that statistical likelihood from manifesting. Sorry for the cautionary earful, but this is the stuff that matters. It's compelling stuff to talk about, and it's under discussed. And so here we are throwing down for you because we care. And we hope that you can incorporate this into your game. We hope that you'll go out and do the kiting and work the rears while you're kiting. And we hope that you'll think of the SpeedBar as gas pedal, because everybody knows when things get weird, you let off the gas. And everybody knows that you only push the gas as much as the road is smooth, right? So think of it as gas pedal. Be pro at letting off, be pro at pushing gently, be pro at being sensitive, be pro about anticipating changes in the conditions, and be really good at getting back to trim and keeping the glider open. If you're looking at a big 20-year perspective, I can put you in contact with a dozen people that were sipping the syrup on SpeedBar use and making their slow aircraft go fast. They found themselves in harm's way with reserves and crashes and all sorts. The conclusion in the end is that they know tons of people that don't push gas, that get down the road really far, and that in the future, all they're gonna do is just keep the thing above head and keep it open and be good at SpeedBar, but use it mostly for emergencies. Just enjoy flying the world's slowest aircraft and watching the terrain go by. I'm Chris at Superfly. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you. Come and join us here in Salt Lake City. Check us out at superflyinc.com. Drop your comments. We'll welcome the feedback. Don't forget to like and subscribe.